After 25 years in America, Adanna Nwokedi returned to Nigeria. But she did not come home in a convoy of blacked-out SUVs or with a noisy entourage announcing her arrival.
No.
She arrived quietly. No one at the airport recognized her, just how she wanted it. To the eyes of onlookers, she was just another tired traveler from overseas, dragging two worn-out suitcases, her feet clad in simple sandals, her natural hair wrapped in a faded Ankara scarf. But beneath that modest exterior was a woman worth millions of dollars. The founder of one of the biggest tech startups in the US, Adanna had built an empire, one that touched Silicon Valley, Wall Street, and Washington, D.C. But now, she was home, and no one knew who she really was. She didn't return to Lagos or Abuja like most returnees. Instead, she headed to her childhood village in Enugu State, Ominachi. The people in the village barely remembered her. Some thought she had died in America. Others thought she had married a white man and forgotten her roots. But there she was, renting a tiny room in Mama Ifeoma's old compound, washing her clothes by hand, buying roasted corn on the roadside, and greeting elders with deep bows like she had never left. Even her own relatives were stunned. "Ada? Is that really you?" her cousin Chika asked, eyeing her from head to toe. "I thought you went to America? What happened? You didn't make it?" Adanna only smiled and said, "America no be heaven, my sister. I just want peace now." Chika shook her head pitifully. "Kai, after so many years, you came back with nothing." Adanna only chuckled again. Inside her room, behind a locked drawer, sat 2 international credit cards and a Nigerian passport bearing multiple business visas. But she wasn't ready to show anyone the real her. Not yet. She had returned with a purpose. The village had changed. The once vibrant primary school, where she studied under the mango trees, was now half-collapsed. The health center had no medicine. The young girls she once played with now sold bread or struggled under the weight of early marriages. Poverty stung the air like dust. So, Adanna decided to test her people, not with riches but with humility. She volunteered at the primary school, helped fetch water for Mama Ifeoma, and even joined the local women's group to sweep the market square on Saturdays. Some people mocked her. Others pitied her. But one man, Obinna, a quiet carpenter with a limp, noticed her differently. He saw the fire in her eyes, the way she calculated things, the way she listened before she spoke. "You're not just some woman who suffered in America," he said one evening, handing her a carved stool he made. "You're hiding something, Adanna." She smiled. "And you think you've figured it out?" Obinna grinned, revealing a gap-toothed smile. "I may not have gone to school, but I know when a lioness is pretending to be a goat." Adanna laughed deeply for the first time in years. But not everyone welcomed her return. Word spread that she was too proud, that she didn't attend church as regularly, that she spoke too softly, too wisely. The village chief's daughter, Amara, who was used to being the center of attention, didn't like her one bit, especially when she noticed that Obinna, the man she had silently admired for years, had begun spending time with Adanna. Meanwhile, Adanna had begun drawing plans, quietly buying land under a different name, gathering a small team of skilled youth, and investing in tools for a project she hadn't yet revealed. But time was ticking. One rainy afternoon, while attending a community meeting, a letter fell from her bag, a letter addressed to Adanna Nwokedi, CEO, ANA Tech Innovations, Washington, D.C. The hall went silent. Chika was the first to pick it up. "What is this?"
CEO?
ANA Tech? Washington. Adanna stood frozen. The masks she wore so carefully had cracked. And now, the whole village stared at her, their poor Rurni, in stunned disbelief. To be continued. The air in the village hall was thick with silence. Eyes darted from the letter in Chika's hand to Adanna's calm but unreadable face. A fly buzzed in the background, the only sound in the room. You're the CEO of a tech company?" Chika stuttered. "In Washington, D.C.? So, you're rich." Adanna gently took the letter from her cousin's trembling hand and folded it without a word. She didn't answer. Instead, She turned to the gathering of elders and women who had watched her sweep market squares and teach children under broken roofs. "I didn't come back for praise," she said quietly. "I came back to reconnect, to serve, to see with my own eyes what has become of the place that raised me." The chief cleared his throat and leaned forward on his cane. "You mean to say you've been here, pretending to be poor, all this while?" "Why?" Adanna smiled faintly. "Because money changes how people treat you. I didn't want handshakes laced with flattery. I wanted the truth. And I found it." Murmurs erupted around the hall. Some shook their heads in amazement. Others whispered words like witchcraft, deceit, and clever woman. But one voice rose above the rest. "Mama Ifeoma." "Let her speak," the old woman barked, her frail frame rising from the bamboo bench. "This girl has done more for this village in 3 months than most of you have in years. She taught our children, helped our old ones, swept our streets. So what if she has money?" It didn't change her character. The hall grew quiet again. Adanna bowed her head. "Thank you, Mama." That evening, news spread like wildfire across Ominachi. Some people came to her door pretending to be old friends. Others sent long text messages asking for loans or help with school fees. Even Pastor Ben from the local church, who had once hinted that she needed deliverance, came with a bottle of anointing oil and an envelope for church expansion. But Adanna remained grounded. She still wore her simple clothes. She still cooked her own food. The only thing that changed was that now, the people around her wore masks. Only Adanna stayed the same. "You knew, didn't you?" Adanna asked one evening as they sat under the neem tree behind Mama Ifeoma's compound. Adanna nodded, sipping from a calabash of palm wine. "Not exactly. But I knew there was something in your eyes. Not the kind of look you get from hardship. The kind you get from rising after it." She smiled. "You speak like a poet." "I'm a carpenter," he said with a wink. "We shape what's broken into something useful." Adanna leaned back, letting the evening breeze dance through her scarf. Her mind was heavy with plans. She had just purchased 10 plots of land on the outskirts of the village, not in her name, but under Ominachi Digital Futures, a non-profit foundation she secretly registered in Lagos. She envisioned a tech hub in the heart of the village, a place where local youth could learn coding, robotics, solar energy solutions, and even animation. A place where talent wouldn't have to run to the city to survive. But her plans faced resistance. Chief Okizi, who controlled most of the village council, grew jealous. He wanted a piece of the pie. When he heard that Adanna had bought land and was importing solar panels, he called for an emergency elders meeting. "She's doing too much," he complained. "Who does she think she is? This is still my village." Adanna, who had slowly become Adanna's closest ally, warned her. "Watch Chief Okizi. He sees your vision as a threat." Adanna wasn't afraid. She had faced investors who laughed in her face in America. She had walked into boardrooms full of doubters. Ominachi would be no different. But here, she couldn't fight with court papers and contracts. She needed strategy, influence, respect, and maybe a little bit of charm. So she began hosting small community gatherings, open-air movie nights with a borrowed projector, tech talks for teenagers, free business lessons for market women. Slowly, minds began to shift. People saw beyond the mystery and rumors. They saw purpose. But not everyone was convinced. One night, Adanna returned to her compound to find a threatening note pinned to her door. "Leave this village while you still can. We don't need your American arrogance here." She read it once, then burned it in a metal bowl and went to bed. The next day, she wore her usual wrapper and rubber slippers and headed to the building site, where a small team of local boys had started digging the foundation for Ominachi's first solar-powered learning center. And from the hills in the shadows, someone was watching her. Someone who knew her past better than anyone else. Someone who wasn't ready for the truth of why Adanna had really returned. The morning sun filtered through the tall palm trees as Adanna arrived at the site where her dream was slowly taking shape. The ground was bustling with life. Young men mixing cement, older women preparing food for the workers, and curious children watching from a distance, whispering stories about the American woman building a magic house. But even in the middle of the noise and progress, Adanna felt it, that heavy gaze. Someone was watching her. She turned her head slightly, eyes scanning the nearby bushes, the road beyond the clearing, the shaded veranda of a distant compound. Nothing. No movement. Just the rustling of trees and the hammering of progress. Still, her instincts, the very ones that helped her survive the cutthroat tech world in America, warned her, someone from your past has returned. Later that afternoon, as the workers rested under a thatched canopy and shared jollof rice and goat meat, a visitor arrived at Mama Ifeoma's compound. A tall man, dark-skinned, clean-shaven with sharp cheekbones and a steady, calculating stare. He wore a crisp white kaftan and carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd seen too much and said too little. Mama Ifeoma squinted. Yes? Who are you looking for? I'm here to see Adanna Nwokedi, the man said, his voice smooth, but with an undertone of quiet threat. Tell her, Chinedu is back. The name slammed into Adanna like a wave. Chinedu. Her first love. Her greatest mistake. They were childhood sweethearts once, inseparable. He was the one who held her hand when her father died. He was the one who used to climb trees just to pluck mangoes for her. They had dreams of leaving the village together. But when Adanna got a full scholarship to study in the US, he didn't celebrate. Instead, he disappeared. She later heard whispers that Chinedu got involved in business deals with local politicians, that he worked with a notorious land cartel in Anambra, that he was dangerous. And now he stood in her doorway, calm and charming as ever. Adanna stepped outside slowly, her eyes never leaving his. Chinedu, you're alive. Very much, he said with a small smile. You look American. I look like someone who worked hard. Chinedu laughed lightly. Still proud. Still sharp. I like that. I hear you're building a tech center. That's impressive. Adanna crossed her arms. What do you want? He leaned closer. Let's just say I have an interest in land development in Ominachi. And your little project, your foundation, is sitting right in the middle of something much bigger than you realize. She didn't flinch. This land is legal. Registered. Paid for. Chinedu's eyes narrowed. Legal, yes. But in this village, legal doesn't always mean safe. I'm offering protection and partnership. Adanna shook her head. You're offering blackmail. I left Nigeria to escape this kind of nonsense. He smiled again, this time colder. Then maybe you shouldn't have come back. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the dry red dust swirling behind him. That night, Adanna sat on her small bed, laptop open, staring at documents and permits. She pulled up a folder she had hidden under the name, Operation UNF, short for Ominachi New Future. But her hands were shaking, buzzed. It was an American number, one she hadn't seen in years. She answered slowly. Hello. Adanna, it's me. We need to talk. Chinedu has been in contact with someone at the State Department. They're asking questions. Her face went cold. So, it wasn't just about the land. Something bigger was unfolding. Something that could destroy everything she had worked for in Nigeria and in America. And Chinedu was right in the middle of it. The night wind howled softly against the windows as Adanna sat on the floor of her room, phone in hand, heart thudding like a talking drum. The voice on the other end belonged to Derek Lawson, her former advisor and close contact at the U.S. State Department. Chinedu has resurfaced in international watch lists, Derek said. He was flagged in connection with suspicious real estate acquisitions in Nigeria, Dubai, and Cape Town, all tied to a laundering syndicate. Adanna's throat dried. You think he's using my project to hide money? She asked quietly. We don't know yet, Derek said. But you've been off the radar for a while. You moved too quietly, and someone noticed. If you're being watched, it's not just because of your success. Adanna hung up and buried her face in her palms. The past was knocking. Loudly. 12 years ago, in the heat of their love, Adanna had made one foolish decision. After her father died and her scholarship funds hit a snag, She had turned to the only person she trusted, Chinedu. He gave her money. Thousands. No questions asked. She didn't ask where it came from. But months later, in her freshman year in Maryland, federal agents showed up at her dorm. Chinedu's name was linked to a financial fraud ring. She was cleared barely after weeks of investigation. She'd erased every trace of him from her life after that. Now he was back, smiling, offering partnership. He hadn't come to build with her. He'd come to bury her. The next day, Adanna returned to the construction site dressed in an Ankara jumpsuit and head wrap. She looked like every other hardworking village woman, except her laptop bag carried files that could destroy a syndicate. She gathered her team under a mango tree. We have to speed up construction. I want the learning center's solar panels installed before the month ends. Adanna looked at her closely. What's going on? She hesitated. The center's more than a school now. It's protection, visibility. Once it's running, it'll attract national attention. They can't touch what's in the light. He nodded, understanding more than she said. That evening, while reviewing permits, her assistant rushed in. Madam, Chinedu is hosting a town meeting. He's announcing a new luxury estate, and the location includes some of your land. Adanna stood up slowly. He's trying to erase my presence. She headed for the town square, where loudspeakers were already booming with promises of development, foreign investors, and employment for the youth. Chinedu stood confidently, flanked by two well-dressed men with government tags on their jackets. One of them was Senator Kalu, a known ally of corrupt land barons. Adanna pushed through the crowd and climbed onto the stage without invitation. "Good evening, Ominachi," she shouted. The murmurs quieted. All eyes turned. "I'm sure you've heard many sweet things tonight. Jobs, money, development. But let me ask you, do these men live here? Do they know your children? Have they helped your schools?" She turned to Chinedu, who smirked. "I am Adanna Nwokedi. I grew up right here, in this soil. I have no interest in grabbing land or selling dreams. I've already begun building a center for your children. A place of knowledge, not lies." Senator Kalu interrupted, laughing. "My dear, you don't understand how development works." Adanna stepped closer. "No, Senator. You don't understand that the future belongs to those who build, not those who steal." The crowd erupted in cheers. But beneath the applause, Chinedu's eyes met hers, dark and dangerous. That night, her compound was broken into. Nothing was stolen, except a USB drive from her locked drawer. The same USB that contained documents linking Chinedu to a laundering operation. And just like that, the war turned deadly. The next morning, the sun rose over Ominachi with unusual silence. Birds chirped, but the village felt tense. Rumors spread quickly that Adanna had challenged powerful men, that her home had been broken into, that the land project was cursed. But Adanna was not hiding. She dressed in a simple white blouse and jeans, tied her braids back, and carried a flash drive tucked deep inside her bag. She had made copies. She wasn't new to war. Before sunrise, she boarded a rickety bus headed for Abuja. Abuja. 3 days later. The city was loud and powerful, suited men, shiny black cars, government buildings behind guarded gates. But Adanna moved with quiet confidence. She had booked a meeting with a senior officer at the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, ICPC, using her U.S. credentials. She entered the glass building with nothing but truth. Within an hour, she presented land transfer documents, wire records, and emails connecting Chinedu and Senator Kalu to an international real estate laundering scheme. By evening, a quiet investigation was launched. But back in Ominachi, the wolves were getting louder. Chinedu called for an emergency town hall. Armed guards surrounded the area. He accused Adanna of treason against her own people, claiming she was a foreign spy sent to destroy development. Just as he finished his speech, a convoy of black SUVs arrived at the square. Agents stepped out. One of them held up a file. "Chinedu Nwankwo, you are under arrest for fraud, land laundering, and conspiracy against the Federal Republic of Nigeria." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Adanna stepped forward, holding her head high. Senator Kalu tried to flee but was blocked by villagers, young men, women, elders, the same people he had lied to. Obinna stood beside her, proudly. Justice had arrived. A month later, the Ominachi Future Center for Innovation opened with over 500 villagers in attendance. Children ran through the corridors of the solar-powered facility, reading books, touching tablets, and learning coding from youth volunteers trained by Adanna's American network. A journalist from Lagos arrived to cover the story. "Why pretend to be poor when you're a millionaire?" she asked. Adanna smiled. "Because if I came here flaunting my wealth, I would have attracted wolves, not partners. I needed to be trusted, to build quietly from the ground up. Just like this village raised me." Mama Ifeoma wiped her eyes proudly. She left as a girl. She returned a woman and a warrior. Closing message to viewers. Thank you for watching this inspiring African story about Adanna, a woman who returned not just with wealth, but with wisdom, humility, and courage. She proved that true strength isn't in showing off what you have, but in using it to build something greater than yourself. Stay tuned for more stories filled with powerful women, village drama, African culture, and unexpected twists. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more epic tales from the motherland. Until next time, remain strong, remain proud, and remain rooted. Globe showing Europe, Africa.